Earlier this season, 270 people walked through my yard, and as you can imagine, I got a lot of questions. So I compiled them all here, and I'm going to break this down into a series where I talk about my most frequently pointed out shrubs, trees, and perennials. These are clearly the plants that stood out in the garden. So if you're trying to get ideas for your garden, these are the plants that stood out here in mine. If you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Michelle. I garden here in Atlanta, Georgia, newly Zone 8A, and I love to grow all the things both edible and beautiful with a special focus on perennial plants because I like a low maintenance garden that you can plant once and enjoy for years to come. So this video is going to be all about sun perennials. These are the 5 most frequently asked about perennials that grow in full sun here in my garden. The first one that I'm going to start with is actually a ground cover. This is Mazus Reptans, and you will be shocked about the number of people that asked me about this ground cover. I had a number of people that came up with their phone that had taken a picture. This ground cover was planted last year. It's a ground cover that can grow in full sun and can also tolerate some shade. And the great thing about this ground cover is that it grows very thick and very lush. The variety that I've planted here is a variety that blooms white. There's also a variety that blooms purple. The main flush of blooms is in the spring, and then throughout the season, you'll get sporadic random white blooms here and there as the season progresses. I learned about this ground cover from Carmen Johnston. She posts over on Instagram, maybe even on YouTube. I will link it if I can. She's an absolutely fabulous landscape designer, and she likes to use Mazus Reptans in her clients between stepping stones and in paths. And I can absolutely see why. This was a definite favorite amongst folks that came and visited my garden during the garden tour. Another variety that I got a lot of questions about was, what is that pink echinacea that is an absolute showstopper down in your side garden? This right here is Magnus echinacea, and I cannot take credit for choosing the variety. This side garden here was one of the areas in my garden that I didn't design or choose the plants. They were actually chosen by Servscape, which is a local everything plant company that offers design consultations, including virtual consultations. You upload your photos, they give you ideas, and I was in a place with this space where I was in a rut and I just couldn't design on any sort of plants. And the fun thing is that these varieties are things that I've never tried in the landscape before and otherwise wouldn't have picked. I probably would have gone for the varieties that I already know and love and have experience in, but getting a second opinion and trying different varieties actually really worked out. This Scabiosa blue butterfly is now one of my favorite perennials. It blooms nonstop for a really long time. Another one that I never would have picked out myself. And this Magnus coneflower is another variety that I never would have picked out myself. This is a native cultivar. It is absolutely stunning. There are probably 30, if not more, blooms on each perennial, and this was just planted last year. This is, I think, a perennial that I'm going to be able to divide and spread around my garden, and who doesn't love free plants? Another thing that I love about this variety is that it is very, very upright. These stems are very, very strong. It is not flopped over. And if you are new here, I am an anti-floppy plant person. So I love the ones that can support themselves so that I don't have to go around and stake them to keep things upright. This perennial is blooming really well for me in more sun, and also I have some patches in more of a shaded spot and they're blooming just as well. This perennial seems to be one that blooms pretty well with less sun, and a lot of my spaces in the garden are on the less sun part of the spectrum of full sun. So I always love finding out what types of plants will bloom well in those types of spaces. So nothing left to say about this one. Let's go on to the next. This is a really well-behaved, mostly upright. Sometimes I do cut it back to reset it if it's flopped over in the garden, and then it just keeps on blooming. I swear, every time I look at this perennial, there really isn't a time that it stops blooming once it has started blooming for the season. I'm currently tracking how long everything is blooming in my garden. So next year is when I'll be able to scientifically report out what are the longest blooming perennials that I have in my garden. But my hunch is that this is number 1. Unfortunately, this is a perennial that's pretty hard to find because it's not terribly happy in a container. And since this industry is mostly plants that are sold in containers, growers tend to focus on plants that grow well in containers for sale. So if you can get your hands on this, I recommend getting one, putting it in a nice sunny spot, and then dividing it throughout the garden in years to come. This is a plant that I like to spread around the garden. Any place that I have a bare spot, I will cut off a chunk and add Mongolian aster to it. Not just because it's free and I already have it growing in my garden, but also because it blooms for a really long time and it has very fine leaves, so it's a different texture from many other perennials, and it just looks good for so long. So if there's a perennial that I can influence you to buy that I know will do well in your garden if you live around me, it's definitely Mongolian aster. I've never sat down and created a list myself of top 5 perennials because I think it would be difficult as my favorite perennials change as the seasons progress. But this one is definitely one that would be in it because it blooms across so many seasons. I wasn't kidding when I said that this Mongolian aster goes everywhere in my garden. It's basically Frank's Red Hot Sauce. If there's a hole in my garden, I'm going to put Mongolian aster in it, and it is absolutely stunning. I might be overdoing it just a little, but I can't get enough of these cute white blooms. Anyways, the last 2 perennials that I got the most questions or comments about were these 2 right here. I'm going to start with this taller purple one. This is Stokes aster. I'm going to get the exact variety of Stokes aster. It is a Walter's Garden introduction through Proven Winners. This was sent to me as a plant to trial in my garden, and I really didn't think I would like it as much as I do, but honestly, these blooms are huge and beautiful. This is a plant that I've had to stake as it does flop. If you don't mind plants flopping, then you definitely don't have to stake it. But for me, I like all of my plants upright. That way I can squeeze more plants into a space. But when I share about staking in the garden, I have since learned that there are people that like the floppy plant look because it looks more romantic and natural. So if you like floppy plants, this is the perfect one for you. And if you like staking plants, this is also the perfect one for you. But truly, this color is really beautiful. And because the blooms are so big on it, it just really pops in the garden. So a really fun sun perennial. And I think it's also a native perennial if you're looking to add some fun color in your garden. This next one right here was confused with a foxglove. It was confused with a hollyhock. It was confused with a penstemon. This is a verbascum. This is Southern Charm verbascum, and this is my first year growing it in the garden, so I can't share whether it reliably comes back, but I have seen it come back in other gardens. Right now, it is very much flopped over and is looking a little bit past its prime. We've had some seriously heavy rains here in Atlanta, so truly I can't blame it. But what I love about this and what I think it offers that's different from like a foxglove, even though it very much has a similar look in the garden, is that this keeps sending out bloom stalks. So I was waiting to make this video so that I could cut this back. Basically, once the blooms are all spent, it's very easy to come back in here and cut that bloom back. And then there are new blooms here that keep emerging. So this has been blooming, I think, for at least 3 weeks in the garden so far, and it's not really showing signs of stopping, which is amazing. Also, the majority of these blooms start out very, very upright. I think the rain has just done a number on this and has challenged it beyond its upright capacity. But this is just such a soft, romantic color. It's truly beautiful. The inner purple with the soft tan. I'm a sucker for peachy colored blooms, and so I'm very much a sucker for this bloom. One tip that I would give you is I think these leaves are incredibly ugly, and maybe it's just me, but I wish I had planted this behind something. That way you just get the spires coming out, and then you won't have to see these leaves, which they're not discolored or yellowing by any means. There are uglier leaves that exist in the plant universe, but they just kind of flop on the ground and sit there. And for some reason, that bothers me. So in my next round of revisions to this bed, I'll likely bump out this border just a little bit and add something that covers up these leaves because it's very beautiful, but I wish I had planted it behind something. It's just an all-around really beautiful perennial, and clearly it stood out enough in the garden for somebody to ask me what this perennial was. So those are my top 5 sun perennials that I got questions about during my garden tour. Like I said, we had 270 people stroll through my garden, and I got a number of questions because people garden in different spaces. Some people have a lot of sun, some people have very little sun. I am breaking this up into a series. So right now, this was all about sun perennials. My next one, I will do shade perennials and then move to compact shrubs for small garden spaces and compact trees for small garden spaces because this is a small garden space. Anyways, I hope this video has been helpful. If you're looking for standout perennials, I hope you will try one of these. I think you will absolutely love them in the garden, and I will see you in the next video.